Hello and welcome everyone to this meeting of the South Kingstown Town Council. It is Monday, February 11th. The time is 7:30. Our first order of business is the pledge to the flag. Please rise and join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. And will the clerk take the roll?
Council President Collins.
Here.
Council Vice President DeCruz.
Here.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Here.
Councilman McAtee.
Here.
Councilman Bailey.
Here.
All members present.
Item number 4 is the approval of minutes of previous meetings. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve 4A, B, and C. Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously and brings us to the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve number 5, the consent agenda.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries as well. And brings us to item 6, licenses. 6A is a resolution granting a victualling and holiday sales license to Cowabunga of 254 Robinson Street in Wakefield. This is subject to approval by the Rhode Island Department of Health and an issuance of a retail sales tax permit by the Rhode Island Division of Taxation. Application by Michael Bafaro. Is Michael here?
It's right there.
Please come on up to our fancy podium and state your name for the record.
Mike Bafaro.
Welcome. So you're going in where Smoothie Booty was? Because this was Rhode Island.
Our specialty is sandwiches. We actually previously owned Lunch Lady in Narragansett, and then Narragansett Sandwich Company just last year. But we always wanted to be in Wakefield, so we jumped at the chance.
Great. So yeah, tell us as much as you want about your business, what your hours are going to be, types of sandwiches you might offer.
Our sandwiches are pretty unique. We're all over the place. I think we're different than anyone else in town. So with Lunch Lady, we won Best Sandwich Shop in South County, and then it was just way too seasonal, with especially the 2 kids. And then so we sold, and then we moved to Point Judith, the Narragansett Sandwich Company. We were extremely successful last year, but Narragansett is still a little too seasonal, so we moved to Wakefield, and our hours we think are going to be 10 to 8, probably going to be a little earlier as the season warms up. And
What's your favorite sandwich?
Cowabunga.
I didn't know. Okay.
Any other questions? No. All right, well, thank you very much. Do I hear a motion on 6A?
I'll make a motion that we approve item 6A.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations. 6B is a resolution granting a miscellaneous permit to conduct a portion of the 32nd Annual Narrow River Road Race in South Kingstown on Saturday, May 18th, 2019, to the Narrow River Preservation Association. This is subject to the execution of a hold harmless agreement indemnifying the town and issuance of a certificate of insurance naming the town as an additional insured for the event in the amounts specified by the finance director. Proceeds to benefit NRPA's educational and environmental efforts. Application by Allison Cates. Allison? I see that 6C is and D. Suppose we can bundle all these together if you just want to go through the list.
I'm James Kaczynski, too. I'm on the board of the Narrow River Preservation Association. And, these 3 events, which Allison is passing information out to you, are
Thank you. Good review.
swim, our road race, and our kayak fishing tournament, scheduled, from the beginning of the summer here to September. And all 3 events, along with several others that we conduct just at Middlebridge on the Narragansett side, are there to promote and raise awareness of the programs of Narrow River Preservation and to increase, the education along the river. So we do several other events that include Art on the River, What Lives in the River. Twice we do what lives in the river, and we work also with restoration along the river. So we've done a variety of things, and the proceeds from all of these events go to help fund our organization.
Any questions from council members?
No questions.
Pretty routine.
Thank you for all the work you do. All right, do I hear motions on 6B, C, and D?
Make a motion that we approve items 6B, 6C, and 6D.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good luck. We're zipping through here. That brings us to item 7A, which is a public hearing. This is a public hearing for the purpose of accepting comments on and considering the town's proposed 2019 hazard mitigation plan update.
Good evening again. Chelsea Siefer, Planning Director. This is our consultant, Carissa Mills. She will provide a brief presentation with an overview of how the plan was formulated and a little bit about its contents, and then we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you.
My name is Carissa Mills. I'm a planner at VHB. It's nice to see you guys. Thank you for having us here today. So we are in the process of updating the town's hazard mitigation plan. We put a lot of effort into this, a lot of good feedback, and the purpose of tonight is to go through, hopefully you guys have taken a look at it, and maybe have some questions, some suggestions. And this is the public comment period. We're opening we had a public comment period for 2 weeks, and this is the culmination of that. And talking through the process. So that covers that right there. The hazard mitigation plan. So why are we creating this? Mitigation plans identify the natural hazards and the impacts in the towns and can help reduce losses from these hazards. Creating the hazard mitigation plan is a means to foster partnership and promote resilience and reduce costs. But really, why are we doing this? The Section 322 of the Stafford Act states that local governments need to prepare and adopt a hazard mitigation plan in order to qualify for some hazard mitigation project grants from FEMA. So that's another good bottom line why we're going through this process. This is the timeline that FEMA recommends and that we have used in this process. We started in January 2018, and it's been about a year. Time flies. We had a hazard mitigation committee, and we've been going through this process, the first part of the process anyway, of identifying the hazards, understanding the risks and vulnerabilities in the town, reviewing the current capabilities. What are you currently doing that's making you better prepared for storms and sea level rise and floods and heat and all those fun things. And then we went through and we reviewed what are the actions that were done in the 2011 plan that maybe need to be updated or rolled in, or good job, you already completed. And then we found out where some of the vulnerabilities were still missing some actions, and we created some new mitigation actions. After that, in the timeline, after this meeting and after we finish the edits to the plan, it's going to go to the state and FEMA for review. Personally, I've had very good luck with the state and FEMA with their review lately. After they give their okay on it, then I will be back here asking you to adopt the plan. And then there'll be an annual review, and then we may be back here 5 years down the road. So the Hazard Mitigation Committee established a series of goals that they want to get out of this effort. They want residents and others in the town to be prepared for these hazards. They want the municipal properties and infrastructure to be better protected. They want to develop regulations to help manage growth in these vulnerable areas, and they want to sort of foster the natural environments, make sure that they're still in good shape. Next. So we looked at a variety of hazards. We looked at, you name it. So this is mainly a natural hazard mitigation plan with a few other man-made hazards. We looked at flooding, we looked at erosion, we looked at drought, we looked at tornadoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, nor'easters, etc. But with that, with each hazard, we also identified a climate change lens. How will tornadoes be different with climate change? That one we're not so sure about. But other ones, like increase in temperature, daily temperatures, or extreme cold events. We sort of put a hypothesis of a lens on each of the hazards. And then we also had an additional section just about climate change. Next one. When we're talking about the vulnerabilities in town, it's easy just to look at what you see floods all the time or what you see is destroyed in high winds. But we really want to dig down into this. And so we mapped the resources. If you go to the next slide. We also mapped parcels that would be whose area of 50% or greater would be impacted by, I think that one was storm surge. Next slide. We looked at inundated roads that would be impacted by 3 feet of sea level rise and storm surge. Next one. And with your 3 feet of sea level rise, what properties are going to be isolated? It's not just the roads, but all those properties could potentially be isolated in the future with 3 feet of sea level rise. Next. Not to forget your inland properties. A lot of inland areas, the flood hazard zone definitely in the interior part of the town. What parcels may be affected by some inland flooding? Next. So that took us to identifying, that's just a brief brushstroke on the vulnerabilities, looked at current capabilities, and then we went to the meat of the plan, which is the action. What is the town really, what do they want to do? How do they want to implement it? Who's in charge? How much is it going to cost you? Next. First thing, we looked at the 2011 mitigation actions. 8 of them were completed, 7 are ongoing efforts. 15 were not completed for a variety of reasons. A lot of them were funding. And 3 were no longer relevant. Next slide. Some of the ones that the committee decided were still important were rolled into the new mitigation actions for this plan. There are 38 actions that address various vulnerable areas such as flood-prone infrastructure, wastewater, natural resources, businesses, bridges, stuff like that. And each action, we created a table for each action. The state loves to see this because it specifies everything out on who's going to do what the benefit is. And it's great if someone comes into the town in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, they know exactly what the committee was thinking when they created these actions. So it holds people accountable. Is this a short-term, a medium-term, or a long-term type of action? And yeah, who's the lead champion? What are some obstacles that you may face? Then after we identified all these actions and detailed them all out, if you hit the next, there's a implementation plan. Basically, meet annually, implement some of these actions, keep track of it. If the situation changes in the town that requires the plan to be rewritten, then so be it. And next slide. So, like I said in the beginning, where we are right now is prior to the state and FEMA review. This plan has gone through a lot of strong changes, and we've had a lot of good feedback. And personally, I've worked on many cities and towns throughout the state, and I'm really impressed, not surprised, with South Kingstown and the passion and how much you guys really embrace this effort and are really looking out for your town. And I think that's it. That's me.
What would you say our biggest threat right now is, potentially?
I think it's hard for me to say, but I think just from looking at what the committee has been putting forth, I think their biggest concern is the coastal infrastructure and storm surge right now. I think, but what the town is doing is they are thinking forward for increased storm surge and increase in sea level rise, and they're really taking that effort. So I think that's important to note now in their planning efforts.
Thank you.
What are the real vulnerabilities that are existing on the inland?
A lot of it is properties. It could be private properties, but those are also taxpayers. Those are large areas of land, and if it's no longer usable, then that could be a concern.
Mr. President, if I may, on those, the committee discussed fire, brush fires, and wind events. Tree canopy failure is a major concern. Those are the two inland threats that were identified, I think.
In addition to flooding. Yes.
In addition to river flooding.
Was, we had the big sort of water contamination crisis last summer. Did that get focused on in this sort of effort? And
Yes, that was, a disaster in action, which is unfortunate, but it really got the people talking. That happened around Labor Day, and we were still working on our mitigation actions, and people came to the table and like, what do we do so we don't run into this problem before? And that is addressed in one of the mitigation actions in the plan.
any other questions up at the table here? Okay. At this point, we'll open it up for public comment. If there's anybody here in the audience who wants to have some input on the hazard mitigation plan, please come forward at this point. Sorry. Chelsea, you want to make some comments?
No, I don't want to say anything. No, I just wanted to thank Carissa for giving her presentation, and if you had any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we will wrap this up and bring it back to you at the next meeting.
All right, any other questions? All right, I will. Okay, please do.
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
So moved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that closes the public hearing. More to come on that issue. This brings us to communications. Communication 8A is a communication dated January 4th, 2019 from Frank T. Landolfi, President of the Hopkinton Town Council, seeking municipal support for increased state aid to education. It's been received and placed on file. What do we want to do with it?
I'll make a motion to put communication 8A on file.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
I think that we all struggle with it, and if any of the towns in Washington County have gotten the negative part of that plan, it's been South Kingstown. And we've argued to try to change that, but I don't see it changing for us.
Yeah, I read the letter, and it seemed sort of nebulous, and I think it is important that we communicate to the General Assembly that we would like to no longer be on the short end of the stick in terms of the funding formula. But I don't know that this is the means of getting that accomplished. So I'm happy to place this on file as well. We had a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. 8B is a communication dated January 31st, 2019 from Luis Fanoff, Town Clerk, providing a copy of Barville Town Council's resolution concerning amendments to the Energy Facility Siting Act and seeking support for their proposed legislation. It's been received and placed on file. And what do we want to do with this one?
I'll make a motion that we place this on file. Item B.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion. We've, in the past, taken action on this energy facility sightings issue. This is probably deserves a longer conversation if we want to take it up at some point. But
I think the correspondence asked that if request that we give serious consideration to supporting proposed legislation when it's introduced.
Right, yeah. So we haven't seen the exact legislation at this point, so it's probably a little premature to do anything more with this. All right.
Can I just ask a question about that? So if we're going to place it on file, can we recall it at some point? What happens if it is something we'd like to talk about? What happens to something that's placed on file? Is it a circular file?
So my impression with this particular correspondence is that when legislation may be introduced in the future, one of us should be, I guess, sharp enough to make sure we bring it up before the legislation is acted upon.
Okay. So we would be then in charge of our own communication
so.
to the state. Okay.
I think so, yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Oh, they'll probably reach out to us again.
Right. The other option would be to send them a letter to let us know when that legislation's been introduced.
That was nice on that one. All right. We have a motion and a second to place this on file. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. It brings us to item 8C, which is a communication dated February 1st, 2019, from Sarah Markey, requesting the town council to make public a copy of a confidential report relative to allegations of sexual harassment involving a council member, been received and placed on file. And I don't see that Ms. Markey's in the audience. So what would we like to do with this item?
Maybe we get legal counsel's opinion on this matter?
Sure. Our office has been in touch with Rob on this matter since it began. And I would note that I don't view this request as an APRA request, an access to public records request. Number one, because Ms. Markey didn't request the report be released to her. She requested that it be released to the involved complainants. Number two, I think in the back and forth with Rob and just considering the circumstances of the request, it wasn't understood or expected that you'd get a response within 10 business days as you would with an APRA request. But I think it does make sense to consider whether the document would be a public document or not under APRA. And so when the manager sent the council last week a copy of the document with suggested redactions and suggested that that version could be made public, I agree with that assessment. But if the council wishes, our office can give you a written opinion that considers whether the document could or should be released to the complainants despite the objection of a council member to its release.
That's our lawyer speaking. I would state it a little more plainly. I think that Ms. Markey's request is not a request under the law, under the APRA Access to Public Records law. If she were to make that request, I've been advised by town solicitor's office that the record would be released, that we'd ultimately have to release it. We would redact the names and information that would identify the individuals who filed the complaints because that was the condition under which the information was provided. However, that which speaks to the decision that the government has made, that which speaks to the deliberative process or the processes that the government engaged in, that's just matter-of-fact description of what the government has done and the rationale that the government used to do what it did. That's going to be disclosable. That's going to be released under APRA if we were dealing with this as an APRA request. My suggestion to the council would be that which is discoverable under APRA should be discoverable. There's no point in our insisting on formalism. I'd be happy to sort of deal with that however the council would like, and I have no problem with our going back and doing, exactly what Ms. Markey has asked us to do, which is request from the applicant or from the complainants permission to disclose that which otherwise we would not disclose, the personally identifiable information. But I do think that anything that the council does tonight is ultimately just one step toward disclosure, either toward full disclosure, including the information with the permission of the complainants, or disclosure without that information under APRA. Is that clear?
So I'm not comfortable releasing any confidential information. Anything that was given to the council in confidence, I am hard-pressed to vote to release.
So, Councilwoman, I agree with you completely, and we will not disclose any confidential information without the permission of the owner of that information.
Yeah, I have a problem with that as well. They gave it to us in confidence. They gave it to you in confidence. Now we're turning around and asking them to break that. Can we break that confidence? And I don't know. I have a real problem with that. I do not have a problem with releasing your response to the letters that you received. The official correspondence that you gave to them to tell them the town's place in this and their course of action, should they so choose. I think that's very appropriate, how the town responded to it. But to release their words, the letters, I have a problem with.
And again, the specific request from Ms. Markey was not, in my reading, make this public. The specific request was, can the document be shared with the involved complainants? So I think that's the immediate question for the council.
So I guess my question is, what is the document? What does that entail?
So the document that the council received, which is what I understand her to be requesting, everything that the council has received, consists of a one-page memo describing the course of collecting of information and response to the internal question that raised, which was, was there a violation of the internal sexual harassment policy? The determination was that the policy didn't apply, and the determination was that I had an obligation, at least under that policy, to ensure that the workplace was free of sexual harassment, and that's essentially the memo. Mm-hmm. The second document was labeled Attachment A, which was a copy of a letter that was sent to an employee and a person employed through the town who were complainants. It summarizes their rights under the law, describes the limits of the authority of the town to take action, and that's that. I mean, that's essentially Attachment A. Attachment B was a letter that was sent to the complainants who were not employed by or employed through the town. That letter described the law and the course of action that the complainants could take because there was nothing that the town could do. There's no ordinance that was applicable in that situation. So that was Attachment B. Attachment C was a copy of emails sent by the I'm not going to give a number, by the complainants who were not employed by or through the town. That Attachment C has personally identifiable information. It has their names, it has their email addresses, it has information about, who they are, because you can sort of piece together based on car make or something like that. You can figure out what's going on. That is the personally identifiable information that was provided in confidence. That information we are not contemplating would be releasable, and we would would protect that information even if an APRA request, a formal APRA request, were made. Attachment A, Attachment B, and the memorandum would not, in our view, ultimately be protectable because it really deals only with the government action, not with the complainant's information. Now, that having been said, there may be some room, if this is going to be made more broadly public, if it's not just going to be a council, for the council's information document, it may be perfectly appropriate, and this is the council's determination, for some more context to be put around that document. I did not engage in a full investigation. I did not interview the person against whom the complaint was made, for example. I did not write down his side of the story. So I wouldn't want a document to go out there necessarily that's seen as prejudicial because it only tells one side of the story. On the other hand, it is the side on which we took action. We didn't do an investigation because there was, in my view, no need for us to go further. We didn't pass this on to the police because there was nothing that the one side indicated the police should be involved in. That was fine for our purposes in handling the information coming at us. It may not be the best way to handle information going out from the town.
So thank you for that clarification. So if Attachment C is not part of the disclosure to the public that Ms. Markey is asking for, then I'm okay with letting the folks know how the town responded to it. And that is, in fact, what Attachment A and Attachment B reveals. Correct?
That's correct. I will say that I have had a conversation with Councilman De Cruz, and he does note one place in one of the letters that he thinks that there's a point of disagreement. And again, I did not interview Councilman De Cruz with the intent of capturing his side of the story. It was merely reporting to the council the allegations that were being made. So again, I think that some context there may be important. It's really the council's report. I think the way I've described it in correspondence to the council, I think it was with you. I may have had this conversation with Mike. In my view, the report belongs to the council. It was a confidential report produced for the council. The information contained in Attachment C belongs to the women who sent it to me. I will protect the information because that's the confidence that they gave me. They said, hold this in confidence. I do not want this to be made public, was the assertion made by at least one of the complainants. To the fullest extent that I can, I will protect that confidence. I think it's important for us to have the ability to take information from citizens in confidence, but I also think it's important to make sure that the council is well informed. So you've got those two things going on there. The report, if the council wants it released, I don't see any reason why it cannot be released. The information in Attachment C is confidential information, and we're going to continue to assert that to the fullest extent that we can. If there is a need, and again, this is the new piece, if there is a need for some contextual reporting above what that memorandum does, I'm also happy to engage in producing that. I will say that would consist largely of either an interview with or allowing Councilman De Cruz the opportunity to provide essentially a minority report or a opposition opinion on, on the information that's been provided.
Okay, so I would think we'd want to have the conversation in executive session with Councilman De Cruz on what he is disputing in the report before we made anything public, and then move forward from there. But if there's something in the report that the councilman believes to be untrue, I don't understand why we would release that. Can you help me understand?
So I don't know that the councilman would assert that it's untrue in its entirety. I think that his concern is that it overstates an element of the claims. It states a response that the councilman has made to a claim, and in the context of the memorandum could be read as an assertion with regard to multiple complaints. So essentially, the assertion or the concern is that the memorandum groups two complaints as being similar that aren't, that there's a distinction between those that's important to him.
So, in regard to the specific request to share the information with the other, what was the claimants? I can't. We could give you that type of direction tonight if we could come to some type of decision on it, and say, and you could even contextualize that as, you know, when you send the report to those women. Is that a possibility?
So I won't speak for the councilman, he can speak for himself, but my understanding is that there is concern that the release of the information without contextual bounding might be prejudicial, that it might create a false impression.
I'd like to request a closed executive session to address this matter.
There can be no vote on the matter tonight, but we can certainly do that for discussion purposes.
There can be no vote in executive session. Right. We can vote on it as an open session item as advertised.
So maybe we could, I mean, we're going into closed executive session later. We could talk about it during that closed executive session.
By majority vote, we'd have to amend the agenda to add that specific item because it's a different executive session matter for a different purpose.
Is that what you would like, Rory?
Yes.
Okay. How do other members of the council feel?
I agree with Rory. I think we need to talk about this, how we want to proceed.
And then, so would we just push?
We'd have
this
to discuss
item?
it tonight and then put it off for
Continue-
a vote.
continue
for
this
2 weeks,
item.
because we couldn't vote on it tonight. But we could talk about it, at least get.
All right, so it would be appropriate maybe at this point to entertain a motion to continue this to the next agenda and then take up the motion to add to the executive session.
So you wouldn't necessarily have to continue it to the next agenda, but you could continue it to the regular session after
the
executive
closed
session.
We could,
Right. Go into close and come back into open. Right? And then act on it tonight if that's what we want to do.
That's all good? All right, so we'll just defer this item until after the closed executive session. And at this point, the motion to amend the
agenda.
Item 15A. What would the wording of that amendment be?
I think a motion to amend 15A to allow the council to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing real estate and a personnel matter related to Councilman Bryant DeCruz is sufficient.
Do I hear that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. All right. Item 9 is comments from interested citizens. Typically, I take public comment. So if anybody here from the public would want to come forward and tell us what you're thinking, please come forward now. State your name for the record.
Ladies, gentlemen, Dan Northup, 13 Pine Street. I actually came over to this meeting, tried to watch this meeting at home. This is several occasions that this meeting is unattainable online from one level or another, whether it be someone speaking here or someone speaking up here or comments from the town manager or otherwise. If we could please square that away and come into the 21st century with it. There's a lot of people that can't attend this meeting, and this meeting is very productive and informative. And the ability to videotape it and share it online is from an informative aspect. We need that goal.
Could, just for our edification, because we can't watch it, would you say, is it a problem for us at the council table? It's
When I was at home this evening, I could hear all the council, men and women, without an issue. Rob, I could hear you guys all, no problem. This right here, public comment, because you had public comment earlier, was not there at all.
Okay.
So, I mean, that makes that public comment null and void to the meeting, and watching it at home makes it like, you know, let me switch the channel. I'm now not informed by a resident who should come here and speak up. You know, it's a disservice, you know, at a small level, but yet a larger level also.
It's certainly important, sir. We hear it frequently.
Whatever it takes to square that away. It doesn't only happen here. I know we're here at the town council. It happens at school committee meetings that are televised online, specifically not necessarily on Cox Cable. But, you know, there's one issue after another. And you can't set up something 10 minutes before and expect it to work. I live in technology. I work in technology. It doesn't work. You have to practice it and get it right.
May I ask him a question?
Sure.
Well, were you watching this through your TV, or were you watching your computer?
No, I was on Cox, Channel 17.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate your concern. We've been wrestling with this for weeks now, and I have to tell you, it's not something we're doing 10 minutes before we do it. We started setting this room up. We set up the laptops. We set up the microphones. No, even earlier today. I mean, we were doing it early today because we wanted to make sure that we got it right, and we've had.
This is the only thing that's failed, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and by all means, Brian, you know me, but if you need help, I'm right around the corner.
All right,
I can be your guy.
we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Any other public comment?
Gary Chapman, Wakefield. I'm just trying to understand how your discussion tonight about making the contents of your investigations public, how that jives with the town's sexual harassment policy as stated, because it pretty clearly states in there that everyone involved, both the person and the complainants, have the right to confidentiality, and the town takes that seriously, I thought.
Right. Mr. President? So the issue really is that the policy doesn't apply to non-employees. That's really the answer. We're outside of the policy. There's only one side of the policy that impacts the municipal employees, and that's the requirement that the workplace be free from sexual harassment. There's no disciplinary element. There's no thing that deals with a non-employee in the policy.
Could you I'm just asking if you could recheck that, because it's not that I believe what you're saying is true, but I believe these people are employees. According to the Ethics Commission, if you receive a salary, I'm pretty sure if you receive a salary, you're regarded as an employee.
The members of the council are not town employees. They are public officials subject to the Code of Ethics, but we did review this again when the matter arose. Under the town's sexual harassment policy, members of the council are not considered employees.
Under the sexual harassment policy?
Correct.
Is it under the State of Rhode Island Ethics Commission?
Well, the members of the council are subject to the Code of Ethics by virtue of their public office. That does not mean they are considered town employees. The Code of Ethics applies to public officials and public employees. But whether they are subject to the Code of Ethics is a different question than whether they are considered employees for purposes of the town's harassment policy.
So they're not subject to that?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Rory, you wanted to say something?
I'd like to take this opportunity for the Town Council to officially recognize the month of February as Black History Month. Black History Month is a time to reflect on the contributions that African Americans make and have made to American society, and to recognize the numerous struggles that define the African American experience in America. Much of Black History Month understandably focuses on well-known movements, incidents, and individuals to tell the story. However, what is oftentimes overlooked is the role played by free speech and free expression in civil rights, politics, art, sports, and entertainment in the shaping of Black history and, by extension, American history. From slavery to rap and hip-hop music, the desire of African Americans to express themselves has often been met with stiff and sometimes deadly opposition. From Rosa Parks to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., their struggles and fight for human freedom and dignity has changed our society. This month, we celebrate their contributions to American history. Thank you.
Thanks, Rory.
Thank you.
Any other comments from members up at the table? All right. Very good. And that brings us to the town manager's report.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one tonight. I will note that the flag report today is a big yellow flag. And that's really because I'm rethinking the entire flag report. I think that it's been a useful mechanism for sort of summarizing where our hot spots have been. But I am starting to think that we need to move beyond the reporting that we've done. And I found this quotation earlier today, and I just love it. The pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, and the realist adjusts the sails. I think it's time for us to adjust our sails on our reporting to the council, and so I'll be designing a new report, really designed around this idea of data, information, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Our flag report has been very much about the data, information, to some extent the knowledge and understanding, but really very much about what we're doing. And I want to start moving toward reports that explain to the council and to the public why we're doing it and what we expect to see happen as a result of the activities we're engaged in. So while we focused very much on this sort of change of data to information, I want to start thinking a little bit more about moving from knowledge and understanding to wisdom. So in the coming days, our coming weeks, next council meeting, we will see a report, maybe a prototype, but designed at getting at those larger questions. What do the activities we're doing mean? What are the implications? So we're moving from what we know to how do we know it, and how do we think we should do about it? What do we think we should do about it? For this week, I will present or provide the council with this report. We have had an ordinance request for beekeeping, and it is an item that you may remember a gentleman came to town council several meetings ago and indicated that there was a concern about there not being an ordinance about the keeping of bees. We have dealt with this matter through the current zoning regulation. Bees are considered livestock in the state of Rhode Island and by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We have a zone requirement that says in residential zones livestock has to be kept 40 feet back from the property line. We've dealt with that. That's the extent of our authority to regulate under the current regulatory scheme. So we may want to engage at some point in a discussion about whether or not a broader ordinance is appropriate. We don't know of any ordinances in the state of Rhode Island. I haven't seen anything in New England. The gentleman who was in did bring in an example from the Midwest. I'm not altogether sure that's a major issue, but I do want to keep it on your radar because we're not going to be able to resolve it entirely. In correspondence with the citizen, I've indicated to him that we really only get involved in sort of dealing with ordinances that are going to have an impact on a large number of residents. This is not an issue we've heard about from many people. Nonetheless, he's made that request of the council, and I want to keep it on your radar. The Watson House disposal or disposition is the subject of tonight's executive session. Just by way of summary, this is property that the town was deeded many years ago, and there was an earlier attempt several years ago to rezone and then sell the property. It sort of stopped at the rezoning. What I am going to recommend to the council tonight, and hopefully we can begin to move forward on, is that we do a request for proposals not having identified the zone and let the proposers tell us what they would do and then consider the zoning after we've got proposals. Marina Park leases, just to let the council know, I understood from our work session last week that we're going ahead and we're going to start negotiating leases with the two marina owners. I have asked Gene to give us the valuations that he has. I actually think we may have sufficient information about value to begin those negotiations without an appraisal. If we're going to do a full appraisal of the marinas, there may be some delay, but we may also run into a significant expense. I'm not sure what makes sense there. Again, that's a subject we can talk about in executive session tonight. School facilities update. The application is on track. The RGB team is working like crazy. I attended a meeting with the superintendent RGB and a number of RGB subcontractors on Thursday last week. Again, RGB is working feverishly to get the application completed. The school building committee has got a meeting scheduled for, I believe, Wednesday.
Wednesday at 2 o'clock.
Wednesday at 2 o'clock. RGB is trying to get the application to the school building committee for review. I will note for the council and for the public that there may be some changes to the application because of the most recent demographics study that has come back from Cooper GSI. Dr. McKibbins, the demographer who did our demographic study a couple of years ago, has done an update. There's been a significant change according to his most recent analysis. Instead of a sort of precipitous decline, it's much more of a flattening out of the demographics, which has significant implications for the elementary schools in particular. It brings into question whether or not space in the interior of the elementary schools can be reconfigured. Again, very preliminary. The school committee hasn't had a chance to evaluate the new demographic study. The school building committee has not had a chance to review the demographic study, and RGB has not made any particular recommendations about what to do about this study, but it could have a significant impact. Not earth-shattering, not totally reforming the program, but definitely have an impact on the elementary school component of the proposal.
Rob, do you know if we received the stage 2 application today?
Amy Reiner just sent out an email probably about an hour ago saying no, we have not yet received it.
Okay, because they had said that we would get it today. That's why I'm asking.
We have not seen it today. We did have a forest forced water main leak on Route 138 this morning, early this morning. It was a significant event, did require sort of alternating traffic on Route 138. The more important and more tragic consequence is one of our Water Division employees was returning to Narragansett after having been out at the site and was involved in a serious automobile accident this morning at about 5 o'clock. Our driver was not seriously injured, but the driver of the other vehicle was. I'm going to leave it at that. It's not a happy report, but it is where we are.
The town solicitor's report.
No report at this time.
And do we have any appointments at all?
I don't know if we wanted to talk about that library vacancy with the two applicants. Both the report indicates this week that they are still interested.
So, has Rory and Deb seen the applications from those applicants? Okay.
Yes.
Great. All right, so do we want to make a choice tonight? Do you guys feel like you want to vote, or do you want to call them back in for interviews?
It's been a while, so I think...
Yeah, I've seen the interviews, and I could make a choice, but
I'd like to bring him in.
there's 5 of us.
I'd like to bring him in for an interview.
Okay. Put them through the ringer again. All right. That brings us to new business. 14D is a resolution authorizing the purchase of 175 horsepower high-efficiency blower core from APG Neuros in Quebec in an amount not to exceed $21,500, including a $3,000 contingency, and authorization to fund same from the wastewater division's unassigned net assets, further described in a memo from the Public Services Director to the town manager. These pieces of equipment are always expensive. Do I hear a motion?
A motion to approve agenda item 14D.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? No. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. And that brings us to item G, a resolution authorizing an award of contract to RGB Architects, 50 Holden Street, Providence, Rhode Island, for a structural assessment of the neighborhood guild, as specified in an amount not to exceed $17,000, including a $3,000 contingency, and further described in a memo from the Director of Leisure Services to the town manager dated February 7th. So, it's like a...
Rob, I didn't look at this particular one.
We've got Terry. Why don't we bring Terry?
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there.
So this isn't working. This is testing. This is essentially for an assessment of the building for the guild. We have a $1 million bond that was passed in 2006. This has been in the capital plan since 2007. It's been a long time coming in terms of the needs of the building, particularly the HVAC system, the windows, potentially the roof. And what we really need to do is get a professional opinion on what needs to come first, what are our priorities, because we only have a limited amount and we need to do what's most needed first. And that requires an architectural and or engineering review, full review of the building. So we'd like to have that done. The differences in the proposals basically reflect the fact that RGB had been the vendor on record back in the mid-'90s when the Guild was went through some renovations at that time. So they do have some of the they have plans and that type of information already on record. So we're recommending to go with RGB for that reason.
If, so this is an initial kind of look at it?
This is really what we're looking for is an assessment and for prioritization of needs with the building. And then we need to see, they'll also provide a probable cost estimate.
Right.
And we will then be able to say, here's what we need to move forward with based on the funding that we have.
So will this firm end up being the firm that you'll use in the future, or will you issue
Not
a new?
necessarily, no. We would still need to follow the purchasing
Great.
guidelines in terms of bidding out for plans and specs. This is just a preliminary assessment.
Thank you. Any further questions?
The only thing I just want to say is that I'm glad that it's kind of phased, because I like the idea of allowing them, because they had an advantage at this point. You could clearly see that in the quotes, and then potentially using someone else in the future.
Sure.
All right, do I hear a motion on 14G?
Motion to approve 14G.
Second.
Just have a comment, as always with these older buildings, if we could let the experts know that I think we should be in favor of restoration rather than renovation. We should cherish these old buildings.
Very good. All right, any further comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 15, closed executive session. Need a motion. Thank you all for coming.
I'll make a motion, we go into closed executive session.
Second.
I think we need to... Was that sufficient? All right, so moved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.